Hmm. Okay. Think we're live, no?
Pennsylvania, and obtained his JD at Columbia Law School.
Hot chick, Jesus.
Expectations. And sister, and they saw her getting lit on fire first. And they were lit on fire. That's 36. And then another 36.
Wow,
And then another
terrible
36.
audio.
And then another 36. And do that 457 times. Because the core issue here, guys, is their intent. So genocide is not a Holocaust. A Holocaust is the intent to kill everyone in that race, religion, or ethnicity. And a genocide sounds like Holocaust, but it isn't. It has a different definition and it has a different meaning. And so when we think Holocaust, we think gigantic, millions and millions of people killed. But in genocides, I can list so many of them. I'll just list a couple. The Iraqi Turkmen genocide, 3,500 killed. The Rohingya genocide, 13,700 killed. The Yazidi genocide, 2,100. Bosnia genocide, all the way up 31,107. But if you want a specific one, Srebrenica, declared by the United Nations as a genocide, 8,372 people killed there. So oftentimes there's an attempt to mislead by saying, well, I mean, we didn't try to kill them all. In fact, I know that almost better than anyone because this is also a mea culpa. Because I was on the other side before when I used to defend Armenian genocide. So I grew up Turkish, and when you grow up in that identity, you believe everything that identity tells you. You get trained. It's almost your software. So we didn't do that. We're good people. By definition, good people would never do that. And not every Turkish person I know, or nearly everyone, is a good person, and we wouldn't do that. And so I would say things like, we were just defending ourselves. And by the way, the Armenians did attack the Turks, and they did kill civilians. You know why they did that? Because we were occupying them. And we said, well, I mean, we got attacked. We had every right to defend ourselves. By any modern definition now, those Armenians who were resisting their occupation would have been called terrorists. Then the second thing I used to say is, well, they're hiding behind their civilians. And it's true, they would hide in the civilians. Do you know why? Because every resistance to an occupation hides in the civilian areas, because there is no other areas. It's not like the Armenians could have set up military.
I can't listen to it. It's only in my left ear. It's impossible.
Approach control. This is Enterprise. Ready for docking maneuver. Enterprise is cleared to dock.
Lock on. Systems locked. Space dock, you have control.
Affirmative, Enterprise. Enjoy the ride and welcome home.
The rest affirms.
Would you look at that?
My friends, the great experiment. Big sensor. Ready for trial runs.
She's supposed to have transport drive. Aye. And if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a wagon.
Some comes to Scott. Their minds, fresh ideas. We don't.
What? The Onion buys Alex Jones Infowars at auction with help from Sandy Hook families? I don't get it.
Whoa! What the heck happened here?
Looks like some lightsaber rookie went wild on these younglings. Man, what an amateur mess. I'd have gone for the legs first.
Man, I don't know. That sounds like it would hurt a lot.
This clearly wasn't a Jedi Master. Probably just some random clone.
Well, I think he did a pretty good job.
Well, let's have a look at the security footage.
I'm going to annihilate you suckers. My desperate need for validation will fuel my rage, and I'll hide my fragile ego behind the pain I unleash on you.
Okay. That was weirdly self-reflective.
I think we've seen enough. Whoa! What the heck?
This attempt at a tunnel run goes awry. I'm using very gentle control inputs, trying to avoid any pilot-induced oscillations, and I'm doing my very best to stay centered in the tunnel. But where it falls apart is this last turn, where I clip my wingtip on the tunnel's mouth. I quickly assess my situation and realize this F-16 is still somewhat flyable, so I climb up above the mountains, trying to put some distance between my jet and the ground, and I start looking for a runway to land on. And after a long and butt-clenched transit, I can finally line up the approach and try to land. I'm having to use a fair bit of rudder to keep this thing tracking straight at slower speeds, and even with me keeping it as straight and level as I can, it's still a pretty sketchy touchdown, and I nearly roll the jet over, finally bringing this F-16 to a stop. This attempt at a tunnel run goes awry.
F-16s are very unstable on the runway. I don't know why they gave them such narrow wheels. Very difficult to land.
This corrupt cop thought he could get away with this, but he didn't know I'm the sheriff's deputy.
Got it. All right.
Instead of digging a trench to install cables, this smart worker decided to tie the cable around his tractor and run it through the ground. You do have to worry about hitting rocks or the cable snapping, but it seems like he got lucky. This method is much more efficient, and the extra dirt is packed back down after. Instead of digging a trench to install cables, this smart worker...
What's your rating?
I don't have a rating.
Have you ever played in a tournament before?
No.
I'll put you in.
The F-22 Raptor initially faced a wave of criticism, with many questioning why so much taxpayer money was spent on it when the F-15 Eagle was already excelling at air dominance. For many, the price tag seemed unjustifiable, as the F-15 had already proven itself in numerous conflicts and was widely regarded as an unmatched fighter. However, the U.S. Air Force saw an opportunity to silence the critics in March 2003 by staging a dogfight to showcase the F-22's true potential. In a controlled exercise, 5 F-15 Eagles were pitted against a single F-22 Raptor. The results were stunning. The Raptor eliminated all 5 F-15s with ease. The entire encounter was over so quickly that many on the ground were left speechless. After landing, one F-15 pilot admitted that despite their best efforts, none of them had even managed to get the F-22 in their sights. The F-22 Raptor...
This is my first MSL role, and I went through 7 in-person interviews and many more phone interviews and many, many more applications to break into that first role of being an MSL. So I'm sure
I can't take it anymore. Master Yogurt needs language lessons. Now.
Yes, he is almost 900 years old, but he can't speak proper English.
Right? I mean, seriously? What's wrong with you? You little ugly green frog?
Yes, you suck so bad. You desperately need to work on your grammar, shrimp.
A bunch of bullies. You all are. Very sad. I am now.
All right, calm down, Goblin. Anderson here will teach you how to speak properly.
Wait, what? Hi. So just try to stop inverting the syntactic structure of your sentences.
Know what you mean. I do not.
Listen, you little green leprechaun. I don't have time for this.
Teach me language. You want, boy? 39 langues différentes. Je peux parler, mec.
What? I can't take it in.
It was announced that Kim...
This guy's neighbor has a hole in their fence with the word cheese on it and has trained his neighbors to pay the cheese tax whenever they feel like it. And the dog on the other side knows exactly what.
What's your rating?
I don't have.
When this guy rode the elevator up to his apartment, he had a near-death experience. Out of nowhere, a piece of wood fell through an unfinished wall and got crushed between the moving elevator and the wall. And once he reached his apartment, he couldn't stop trembling from fear. When this guy rode the
You would think now is the right time to fly.
If you're trapped in a burning building, you could strap into a high-rise parachute safety system and position yourself at a window. Then just fall out and quickly pull the cord to activate the system. This will inflate the mechanism, which will propel you safely away from the building. The device will work like a parachute, ensuring a controlled and safe descent to the ground. If you're trapped in a burning building, if you're
Where's the exact center of the universe? The answer will blow your mind, despite what you...
Well, look who it is. Darth Traitor.
What's up, dude?
You were the chosen one, douchebag.
Wow. Okay. Guess we're skipping the small talk, huh?
Why did you turn evil, dude?
What are you talking?
This is probably the most popular linear algebra book ever made. It's super popular and widely used today. It's called Elementary Linear Algebra by Howard Anton, and this is a widely used book. This is an older edition. This is awesome for beginners. It's really standard. So if you're taking linear algebra and you're looking for like help with linear algebra, this is good because the examples in this book and the exercises in this book might show up on your test because they're typical, they're standard problems.
Would you rather be able to predict the future or know people's name without ever asking?
I saw this over and over again in the SEAL teams. You get a young kid that's coming through training and they go into a room and they're getting shot with simunition bullets or there's someone yelling and screaming. We'd put Arabic women walking out of rooms. We'd have people get blown up with wounds. We would do this to them over and over again. So they realize, okay, I just got to relax. I got to detach from this situation so I can process what's happening and I can make a good decision because no one is making a good decision when they're scared. I saw this.
Who is your favorite actor?
Today we are going to discuss about how small...
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning. This is the only time an F-22 Raptor was shot down by a...
Fuck off! This do shit!
When it comes to the ocean, the orcas are strategic hunters, coordinating a...
Goosebumps happen when...
This might be the most dangerous gift shop in the world. If you can manage to...
Big swords don't work the way you think. In fantasy, big weapons like claymores, greatswords, and spy-handers are perfect for dealing huge...
A technician ordered a tank for the aircraft carrier.
Why didn't Count Dooku say anything before he died? Because he could have told Anakin that Palpatine was a Sith Lord or that the clone troopers would betray the Jedi. But in the book for Revenge of the Sith...
As the dust settled over Europe in 1945, the end of World War II was marked by a series of monumental...
In 1982, an SR-71 Blackbird was conducting a high-stakes intelligence mission over Lebanese airspace when it suddenly detected signals from a Syrian SA-5 missile system.
Right. I'm trying to figure it out. So what is... I think that... I'm confused. So right now, the difference between hidden variables and quantum entanglement is 5.6%. That's the claim. Because of 5.6% that they cannot account for, they want to convince us reality is not real. The moon is not there when we're not looking at it. The cat is alive and dead when we're not looking at it. And there is instant communication across the universe. Instant communication across the universe. It's not just communication. It's much more. It's more than communication. It's that the particles conspire in real time to measure, to co-measure, to give the same measurement, to coordinate their measurement. Anyway, it's completely redonkulous because of 5.6% that cannot be accounted for. It is weird. It looks weird. If this is true that in reality we get 50% and all that we can produce is 55.6, meaning this is the frequency of different results. We want what do we want? I mean, that's the question. Which is actually better? One second. If Chica Bonita wants to send me a message. Come on. They're not going to tell me. They're not going to tell. Wow. Wow. Chica muy bonita. Wow. Chica bonita. Chica bonita. Wow. There's a big chick, but not tall. Wow. Good chick. Good chiquita bonita. Anyway, so how do we improve this? Who says so? What happens? I think we did this yesterday. So if we completely, oh, this is removing the randomness. What if we have pure randomness, zero correlation? What if we don't correlate? Is there an undo? Okay, no more undo. Let's run it. Let's see what happens. This is 10,000. It's running. Okay, this is okay. So now let's completely decouple this is completely decoupled A and B. Let's give them separate random values. So this is 1 and 2. I can't see where my mouse cursor is. Okay, so this thing we're gonna copy paste. La 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 la. La 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 la. Okay, these are completely decoupled particles. Particulates. Let's see what happens. Isn't this 50%? So I don't get it. So he says frequency of different results is 50%. He's proud of 50%. That's exactly what we're getting now that we decoupled the particles. 50% they're the same and 50% they're different. Now I'm confused. He's proud of 50%? They're not even coupled. That's totally weird. How could they be decoupled? Ti la 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 li la la la. Now I'm confused. I'm thoroughly confused. This server used to be so active, and now it's completely dead. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on. And this server is alive and well. But it's impossible to talk to these people. These people are very violent. These people no longer are active. Ti la 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 la, li la la la, li la li la la la. I wish there were people I could talk to, like normal humans. Let's talk like normal humans. Oh no, we don't talk like normal humans. We don't talk. No, no talking. We only attack. Attack of the clones. We only attack. And we are attack mobiles. Alright, let's see what's going on. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Let me see what's going on. I'm trying to kill an app on my phone. Okay, it's dead. Just want to make sure YouTube on my phone. Oh, I'm tired. YouTube on my phone. Okay, it's good enough. All right. Why is this on 0? What the heck is going on? La 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 that you used to know. You didn't have to know, Nina. Nina na 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 Nina na 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 na. Nina na 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 Nina na 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 Nina na 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 na. Nina na 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 na. I'm just checking the beginning of our stream. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, it looks fine. La 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 la. So I don't know if you asking me what's going on. I'm confused. Very confused. Joe Rogan just revealed real reason Kamala Harris refused. So now I'm confused. You're telling me that when we decouple the particles, we get 50%? That's the result of decoupling the particles? I don't know. I'm so confused. So confused. See, particle, spin A, spin B, randomness 1, randomness 2, spin A, spin B, randomness 1 and 2. They're completely decoupled. A and B. The same goes for this one. A and B, value, randomness, A and B, yeah, completely decoupled. And angle A, angle B, or randomly selected. Then you measure them. This is complete randomness. That's what it says. Let's run it again. And it makes sense. I mean, when they're completely random, so this guy's always up. Wait a minute. Left is always up. No, left is always measured up, but left is spinning freely and right is spinning freely. So sometimes it's up and up. Yeah. And the same goes for this one. They're completely decoupled. Okay. But what if we couple them? Control Z all the way. Tira la 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 la. Tira la la. Oh, it's done. This is when they're coupled. This is the result of being coupled. So the frequency, this 50% is weaker. This is stronger. Being different is the mark of correlation. It doesn't matter when they're different results. Why is it important when they're different? The question is, they're different only 50%. What do you mean frequency of being different? I don't get it. Isn't this what do you measure? I don't. I'm so confused by this test. I'm so confused by this test. I'm so confused by this test. I am so confused by this test.
In the 1930s, Albert Einstein was upset with quantum mechanics. He proposed a thought experiment where, according to the theory, an event at one point in the universe could instantaneously affect another event arbitrarily far away. He called this spooky action at a distance because he thought it was absurd. It seemed to imply faster-than-light communication, something his theory of relativity ruled out. But nowadays, we can do this experiment, and what we find is indeed spooky. But in order to understand it, we must first understand spin. All fundamental particles have a property called spin. No, they're not actually spinning, but the analogy is appropriate. They have angular momentum and they have an orientation in space. Now we can measure the spin of a particle, but we have to choose the direction in which to measure it. And this measurement can have only one of two outcomes. Either the particle spin is aligned with the direction of measurement, which we'll call spin up, or it is opposite to measurement, which we'll call spin down. Now what happens if the particle spin is vertical, but we measure its spin horizontally? Well then, it has a 50% chance of being spin up and a 50% chance of being spin down. And after the measurement, the particle maintains the spin. So measuring its...
This doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is obvious. As far as I know, this is completely wrong. The spin of the particle does not change. The particle moves up or down, or with the field, or against the field, whatever. But the particle doesn't change orientation, so that's incorrect.
Spin actually changes the spin of the particle.
No. Nobody says that. Who says that? That's not correct. That's not correct. does the measurement of a particle change its spin? So quantum uncertainty, the act of spin measurement itself perturbs the state of the particle. After measurement, the particle spin state is changed, and it's impossible to know what the state was before measurement. Measurement is not an act of spin measurement, but rather spin alignment, anti-alignment. Particles like electrons do not have a definite spin state until measured. They exist in an indefinite state, or mixture. When measuring the x-spin component of an electron, the act of measurement can rotate the electron's angular momentum. Even when entangled particles are separated, measuring the spin of one particle can instantly change the state of the other particle. I don't know. What is the spin of a particle? Why does observing it change? Spin is a property of a quantum system that tells how the system transforms under rotation. I don't know.
What if we measure spin at an angle 60 degrees from the vertical? Well, now since the spin of the particle is more aligned to this measurement, it will be spin up 3/4 of the time and spin down 1/4 of the time. The probability depends on the square of the cosine of half the angle. Now, an experiment like the one Einstein proposed can be performed using 2 of these particles, but they must be prepared in a particular way. For example,
but how do you know that? How do you know what you just said? This is useless. La 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 la. La 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 la.
He was born in Ried im Innkreis, Oberösterreich, Austria in 1945.
1945.
He studied undergraduate physics and mathematics at the University of Vienna.
Where do they get these people to introduce these people? Jesus.
From which he also received a PhD in physics in 1971. He is currently professor emeritus at University of Vienna and senior scientist at the Austrian Academy of Sciences, where he also served as president until recently. Please join me in welcoming Anton Zeilinger to the stage.
Microphone. Then we turn this off.
Zeilinger.
Yeah, hello. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm grateful to the Swedish Academy of Sciences and its various committees to have elected me as a winner of this year's prize. I would like to, in the beginning, also appreciate some basic facts. One is the fact that I was born into a location at the time where it became possible to do such work, which was actually a close call. I was born 2 weeks after the end of World War II. I'm grateful for the family where I came from, my father and my mother, who really fostered this kind of curiosity which I had. They never told me what to do, but it was clear that to be curious is important. I would like to thank my family for enduring me, my wife Elisabeth for supporting me very strongly, and also she made her own, they say, compromises in her career for me. And I'm grateful for my children, the taxpayers. The taxpayers in Austria, in Europe, even in the US, who give us the money to do this. And that is really a big privilege.
That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Nobody gave you the money. This was stolen at gunpoint. These pompous elites are so disgusting.
I would like to dedicate my lecture to these two people who were very important for me. One is Helmut Rauch, my academic teacher at the university. A fundamental work was Helmut Rauch. I also learned that the intuition can be much stronger than logic arguments. And that he unfortunately also passed away 3 years ago. To the foundations of quantum mechanics was the fact that Rauch, Treiber, and Bonse in 1974 had developed a neutron interferometer. Neutrons are massive particles, and for massive particles, the opposite than what John showed. For massive particles, the particle feature is obvious, but the wave feature is the one you have to show. And this was known for a long time, but they built a beautiful interferometer, which is this does it work? No, doesn't work. Doesn't matter if it's work, it works or not. It's this E-shaped thing, made of a perfect crystal, which splits and superposes quantum states. And with that, I was not participating in the development, but I had the idea in 75 to use this to demonstrate what is known as 4-pi spinor rotation. If you turn anything around by 2-pi like me, turning around, I'm the same. If I were a neutron, I would have to turn around twice to be the same. It's the phase which is different. And this we showed in that experiment. It's actually, to me, it's one of the first experiments which later was so obvious that nobody mentions again how important it is. It's used in quantum computers all over the place and all this kind of stuff, right? Then in 1976, and this is important, I think, for all of us, just a year after we had done the experiment, I discovered a conference organized by John Bell and Bernard D'Espagnat in Erice in Sicily, which was called Think Shops on Physics, Experimental Quantum Mechanics. I went there, I presented this experiment. At the conference, I met Alain, I met John Clauser, I met Mike Horn, I met basically all the players in the field, and they talked about entanglement, and I did not have the foggiest idea what they were talking about. I really did not understand it, but it took some time. In the meantime, we worked on other fundamental experiments. It's my journey, as I said, my journey through quantum wonderland. I want to tell you today. One experiment is this famous two-slit experiment, has been mentioned by John already. It's a picture from the dialogue between Bohr and Einstein, where you have a situation where some radiation, can be particles or can be light, can pass through slits here in the middle and they form fringes. And the question is to which slits there's to go through. Right? And the modern way to say it is that the fringes back there only arise if you can nothing say about which path they went. They themselves don't know it. Nobody in the universe knows it. And I say even God doesn't know it. So this information is not there. So we did the experiment, Gehler, Schall, Treiber, and Mampe, with me with very cold neutrons. At the reactor in Grenoble, what you see here is the distribution of neutrons with a solid line being first principles theory with no free parameter. Now today this is obvious. In the old day, when I gave this talk, even famous professors in the first row got up and said, it really works that way? One particle by one particle. That told him, what would you expect? That's what your theory says, you know. And this kind of experiment also allowed us to put limits on the possible hypothetical nonlinearities of quantum mechanics. Another important person in my life was Cliff Schall. He was a professor at MIT. I worked with him on neutron interferometry. He got the Nobel Prize in 1994, and I was here actually for the Nobel celebration.
It's impossible. I mean, it's incredible how much I'm learning from this presentation. It's like on YouTube, 99 of the material is regurgitated. Everybody repeats everybody else. When you finally listen to a Nobel Prize winner, he doesn't regurgitate anything. Everything he's saying is new stuff. Fascinating.
Learned from him one thing, and that is do every experiment at least one magnitude more precise, one magnitude better than what you think is necessary. And it always pays off. Then another interesting thing happens in 1985. 1985 was the 50th year of the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paper. And in the fall of 84, I come in the morning to the lab, and Mike Horn says, do you want to go to Finland? And I said, sure, anytime. Yeah, there's a conference in Finland about Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen. So we said, oh, we have to invent a way which connects interferometry with Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen. And that way we invented this Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen interferometry, where instead of spin, where the two states are up and down, this is two different ways of propagation. And the same mathematics, the same physics, and this was the first suggestion of using external variables for this kind of Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen work in the situation. This is not quite common. What happened at that time is that parametric down conversion as a source of entanglement came out and gave us sources which are much better, much intense, much cleaner, and so on than atomic transitions. This was discovered by Bern and Weinberg in 1970, and the Mandel group started to do experiments in 85, and Ellie and Shi in 85 did the first EPR test on using down conversion. And we proposed in 89 this kind of experiment with momenta, which is just what you see here. That was performed by Rarity Tapster in 1990. Barry Tapster in the Chow group in 1990. At that time, something else happened. This is my journey through the world. Something else happened, which was interesting. In 84, Danny Greenberger, who is here in the audience, came to Vienna on a Fulbright fellowship, and we sat together and discussed what can we work on what kind of project. And we both had been thinking of maybe it's interesting to look at 3-particle entanglement, not just 2, which sounded okay, something okay to do, you know, but who says that this would be interesting? It turns out that this was mind-boggling. Turns out that if you have a 3-particle entanglement, like written down here, 3 polarizations of photons, then you can have a situation that where upon measurement of 2, you can predict with certainty what the polarization of the third one is, but the local realist would predict the exact opposite than quantum mechanics. So it is not a statistical contradiction. Before, I had thought naively the difference between quantum physics and classical physics is statistics. No, it's not statistics. It's a definite opposite. And here are the 3 of us talking about this kind of experiment. And since 1988, this was my goal. This experiment was my goal, and it took us 10 years. And at that time, we had no idea how to create entanglement of more than two particles. We had no idea of the proper source. We have no idea about how to measure it and so on. All this was developed over the time. I say this so strongly because today in many applications, when you apply for money, you have to write down what your goal is, what you want to achieve in 5 years, and you have to write down which methodology you want to use. This would have been completely impossible for the GHZ experiment. Completely impossible. In the meantime, then something else happened in 1990. I moved to Innsbruck, and they suddenly had a lot of money because of this new position and so on. So I could really buy everything. I could buy the down conversion crystals, the first one. One of them is now in the Nobel Museum, etc. Here's an experiment we did. It was the first experiment with down conversion in our lab, where we pump a crystal. This is the blue pump, and the green and the red photons come out. And what we do, we send the pump back, so we create another pair, but actually it's the same pair. One pair creates the same pair, either sent this way or sent this way. And then you put in mirrors, and then by moving any one of the mirrors, you can suppress the interference and so on, which is an effect that cannot be identified as effect on one photon only. In 1905, important thing which happened was that Paul Queer joined my group also, besides the first collaborator in the experiments was Harald Weinfurter. And when he came, we decided to do these experiments, but we had no idea how a laser works, really. We had to learn everything from the scratch. In 95, Queer joined us, and we developed this new high-intensity source for entangled photons, which became the workhorse for a very, very, very long time. At about the same time, the quantum information became a fledgling young bird, you know. It all started in 95 with Stephen Wiesner, who suggested that if you can print the number on a banknote with quantum states, then it cannot be copied. This is an idea far ahead of its time, and it was only published in '83 upon support by John Bennett in a cryptic journal. This idea had already had the feature of no cloning. It's important that you cannot clone. A theorem which was later formulated by Wouters and Zurich, randomness of the individual event and complementarity. And the name qubit was then invented by Ben Schumacher, the general superposition of 0 and 1. And here's our experiment on dense coding and experimental quantum communication, which is, as far as I know, the first application of entanglement in a quantum communication scheme. So you have a source which produces entangled photons, and then you send them through this diamond here, and you superpose them on a beam splitter again, the two photons. And by manipulating only one of the two photons, you can encode 4 different informations instead of only 2 in a classical polarization. In practice, it was only possible to encode 3 because of limitations, but that's a separate history. And then finally, this is 96 with Marek Zhukovsky and Harald Weinfurt and Mike Horn. We have very long been discussing how to...
Okay. I don't understand anything he's saying, basically. Oh, the channel name is Nobel Prize. That's interesting.
So our next speaker is John Clauser. He was born in Pasadena, California, US 6 at 9.
From 1969 to 1997, he worked at Nash in Wardy in development.
Over again then. The first experiments to actually test what John Bell had shown us was probably one of the most important discoveries, I would think, of the recent decade, or the recent century, in fact. So these are, so I will discuss the experiments, and then in order to understand the experiments, Mike Horn and I developed what's now called the theory of local realism, which is in essence Einstein's whole program for doing physics. And unfortunately, it's wrong, which is what the experiments show. And finally, I will end with the does this work? Yeah. Discussion of why I still am totally confused about what's going on with quantum mechanics. Okay, let me start with the question: what is quantum mechanics? What is quantum entanglement? Okay, quantum entanglement started out with Schrodinger. Schrodinger produced not one but two important equations. He started out with the first equation, which was for single particles, in particular hydrogen, which has a single electron. And he miraculously described the structure and the energy levels of hydrogen. But more complicated was helium, which had two electrons. So he produces a second equation, which now involves two electrons. The two are very different equations. The second one allows quantum entanglement, which is a new solutions emerged from the second equation. And the peculiarity is that the two electrons are now intimately correlated. At the time, nobody suggested doing any experiments to test this rather bizarre prediction. However, both Einstein and Schrodinger were very disturbed by this phenomenon. And in fact, Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen in 1935 proposed the addition of additional variables to quantum mechanics in order to explain what's going on. Niels Bohr, on the other hand, said no, they're not needed. And I discussed all of this very nicely. So one of the first questions I was asked when I was talking about this in the Swedish embassy a couple of weeks ago was, what is a Bell inequality? This is what we, in fact, tested. There's not one, but there's actually three important Bell inequalities that I will talk about. The first, of course, was John Bell's 1964 inequality that Alan described very nicely. There's one problem with of the theory. In order to be useful, a theory must make an experimental prediction. And unfortunately, John Bell's paper made no experimental predictions because it demanded a perfect experiment, and which had certain certainty in the outcomes. And as Ben Franklin pointed out, the only thing certain in life or in nature are death and taxes. Unfortunately, this is not death and taxes. So the with help from my associates, Mike Horn, Andrew Shimoni, and Dick Holt, who is here in the audience, we produced the Clauser-Horn-Shimoni-Holt, now commonly referred to as CHSH inequality, which was made the first real testable experimental prediction. So, and we proposed a detailed experiment to do that. And we noticed various important loopholes, one of which, of course, was mentioned that he tested, but a very important loophole was that the data really couldn't violate the inequality on their own, so we had to add some additional assumptions. So the third inequality is now was produced by Mike Horn and I in 1974, and it is the first loophole-free experimentally testable inequality. Okay, so start with the first one. As already noticed, Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen, and others had always assumed that quantum mechanics always made correct predictions. The grand irony of this Bell's paper is that he showed that Einstein's original intent of that paper was exactly the opposite of what was true. That if they wanted to show that the correct predictions led to the need for hidden variables, and what Bell showed was that if you put hidden variables in, then you can't get the predictions of quantum mechanics. So again, I said it was not really testable. So CHSH in 1969, we were inspired by this work and wondered, well, can we really relieve get rid of Einstein's requirement for a perfect experiment? And indeed, we found that yes, we could. And so we designed an experiment to actually test it. We worked out all the details of what you needed to do in order to test it, and that was the first actually hard experimental prediction. And it doesn't require Bell's impossible to achieve conditions. So we now have two theories, two different sets of predictions: quantum mechanics and Bell's or the CH inequalities prediction. So, being an experimentalist, let's actually do an experiment and find out which one is true. So, in order to do this, we had to add some minor supplementary conditions, but we believe that they were quite reasonable, rather weak. Okay, the third inequality is the CH or the Clauser-Horn inequality that was developed in 1974, and it was to test what is now called local realism. We wondered when we were doing the experiments, we wondered, what is really being tested here? Is it just the addition of hidden variables, or is it something more profound than that? And we found that indeed it is far more profound. It was a test of Einstein's whole platform for doing physics. that we effectively were putting him out of business. And so and in fact, the theory when we developed it was effectively dead on arrival. It was already refuted, but nonetheless, we tried to put it in as clear as possible set of terms as we could. So, and in the process, we formulated a new inequality, the CH inequality, and it allows loophole-free tests. So now, if with some even milder additional assumptions, then the first experiments that I had done, 72 and 76, actually knocked it out so that it was already dead. More recently, and it's taken a long time because the technology did not exist at all in order to test it in 1974, it has now been tested conclusively. So now, without any loopholes at all, one can say, and I agree with the last conclusion, it's dead, Jim. So, what are some of the experiments? There are three important ones that I did. First was with Stu Friedman, who was a graduate student at UC Berkeley. We published the results in 1972, and this was the first experiment to actually test the CHS inequality. In parallel with us, Nicole, I mentioned, who was here, was working with Frank Pipkin at Harvard, and they got the opposite result. Whoops, one of us is in trouble. So they decided not to publish. They were skeptical of their results, but now I'm skeptical of my results. So what do? Well, I decided, I needed to repeat their version of the experiment, which I did in 1976. And then just along the way, one of our assumptions had, and I was kind of searching for loopholes, had required photons to act like particles. But I discovered that there was no actual experimental proof that photons did act like particles. So I did an experiment 74 to prove that. Okay, so here is the first experiment, a picture of it, and that at the right end, there's a very young Stu Friedman. In the middle is an atomic beam apparatus sitting there pumping away, oil leaking all over the floor, a pair of polarizers on each side, which would rotate. So, and this became Stu Friedman's PhD thesis at Cal Berkeley. So what we did is we had a calcium atomic beam, and we excited it with this UV lamp. Very weak excitation. We wish we had lasers, which didn't exist at the time. So we got 6.3 sigma result. I mean, the 5 sigma criterion that is now common was invented by Louis Alvarez at Berkeley, and he was a strong taskmaster on any experimental results that came out of Berkeley. So this was the second experiment, which I did. I mentioned this was a repeat of the whole Pipkin experiment. I used the same polarizers, but I used their source of mercury for emitting, creating the 2 photons. And Dick Holt very generously taught me how to do it. It's not easy, and that is my Nobel artifact that I have donated, is one of the sources. So it used mercury with an electron beam exciting the atoms, and I got at least a 4 sigma result there. And we used the same protocol in order to introduce the assumptions. So the other experiment I mentioned had to do with, was there a real way, experimentally demonstrated wave-particle duality for photons? Photons started in 1917 when Einstein was trying to explain how does a gas and a thermal, a Planck spectrum of light come to thermal equilibrium with each other. And he noticed that photons had to behave by what he called directional energy bundles. We now call them photons. Then Schrödinger noticed that, what's the difference between, asked the question, well, what's the difference between a particle and a wave? Well, a wave could be just a classical pulse of light. And that is commonly referred to as the old Schrödinger interpretation. So how does one tell them apart? Suppose you have a source and you send light through a half-silver mirror. If it's a wave, the wave will go both ways, reduced intensity. If it's a particle, the particle will go one way or the other. Now, if I have 2 detectors behind the half-silver mirror, if it's a wave, they will both see this pulse, and there will be a finite probability that both will register simultaneously. If it's a particle, only one of them. So how does one do that? So I think Schrödinger suggested this, and Janissy in Budapest actually tried it, but unfortunately they put in an inconclusive experiment. So I went back and tried to figure out how did one do it totally conclusively. And so I did it actually using the same source that I used for the producing for the mercury Bell-Serum experiment. We had photons going in both ways and 2 half-silver mirrors. And using some work by Glauber's formulation, one could show that the coincidence rate between here and here, there should be none, of course, if it's a particle, but there should be an anomalous if it's a wave coincidence rate. The product of these 2 coincidence rates here and here must be greater than the product of these coincidence rates. And so here's the data, and it's quite the opposite by about 20 sigma. So indeed, photons do act like particles. So as I mentioned before, Michael Horn and I were trying to understand what it is that Bell-Serum experiments actually say. So we developed what's called the theory of local realism. Originally, we called it objective local theories in our first paper on it. And it's an extremely general theory that takes into account all of the basic elements of Einstein's platform. And along the way, we produced the CH inequality, which is actually a hard experimental prediction with no loopholes. We did not have any assumption of causality, which we had earlier on. There was no behavior requirement for a particle-like behavior. And then there was some discussion among various other workers, John Bell and Abner Shimoni, added additional components. So presumably, it is better called Bell-Clauser-Horn-Shimoni local realism. it's very short-lived, as I mentioned. It was already dead on arrival. But that wasn't good enough. It had to really be shown to be dead with no loopholes. So by testing. Okay, what does it assume? Localism is extremely simple theory. Anton Zeilinger, and please quote me, tell me if I'm misquoting you. At one point, he was at a conference. He said, if Bell's inequality and local realism had been discovered before quantum mechanics, it is so reasonable it would have been taken as a law of nature, adapted as a law of nature. Unfortunately, it's wrong. So, what does local realism assume? It assumes that nature is made out of stuff. Well, what is stuff? Well, we may not even know what it is. It is what Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen referred to as elements of reality. It's what we call matter, or what Clauser-Horn called objects. John Bell referred to it as beebles. It's there. It's distributed throughout space. Now, actually, Einstein's whole program, and general relativity in particular, goes a lot further. And he says that, well, it has a finite mass energy density, and it is that density that determines the whole geometry of the universe. We don't need that for local realism. All we need is that it's there. So it could evolve stochastically, or it can evolve deterministically. We don't care. It's stuff you can put in a box. You can surround it, and the stuff that's in the box, if you're doing an experiment, the stuff determines the probabilities of any of the experiment that you actually do there. We assume that there are real results that happen when you do an experiment. That is, unlike Schrodinger, actually, he thought the whole idea of the cat in the box experiment was a total absurdity. We assume that the cat is either alive or dead, and we just don't know which. That a real result always occurs. We assume that the properties of the stuff determine the results of an experiment you do. If you have a parameter setting on your apparatus, and then you change the parameter setting, presumably you will get a different result. So what does it predict? Well, suppose you have two very widely separated boxes. Each has stuff in it, and you're doing experiments in these two widely separated boxes. The assumption following Einstein's requirement for locality is that stuff in one box, and the parameter settings, the result of the experiment in one box, measuring that stuff, cannot be influenced by the parameter setting choice made in the distant box. That's all you need to produce the Clauser-Horn inequality. Okay, so here's what are boxes? Well, they're just closed surfaces. They separate. Each closed surface has an inside and an outside. So here we have a pair of boxes. Okay, these characters are well, I made that drawing in 1976 before the characters had been named Alice and Bob. Well, okay, so but she's perhaps trans. I don't know. So what? Here we have Alice and Bob making measurements, and they get a result: yes, no, on each side. So we have our boxes here are now shrinking at the speed of light. And so they're drawn so that we're doing the experiments when there's space-like separated. So if I plot it versus x in time, here are the boxes shrinking simultaneously and doing experiments. So the assumption is that stuff back here in the common overlap region is what is the result of the experiments. If you read some of John Bell's stuff, you have to be careful. For some reason, he had these reversed. He had the arrow of time going to the left. I'm sure he had a reason for it, but I don't know what it was. Okay, it's dead, Jim. My apologies to Star Trek. It was, for a long time, it was very difficult to do this. The technology just simply did not exist back in '74, but it has improved. So it became very important to eliminate the loopholes in the earlier tests of the CH-SH inequality, and to really do a loophole-free experiment. And finally, most recently, at the labs in Vienna and in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, it has been totally killed dead. Okay, now I will use my time remaining to make a value statement, if you will, about why I have the faintest idea what's going on. And I argue that, in fact, there's been an elephant in the room, pardon the metaphor, that has been hanging around ever since Schrodinger and EPR. Remember that Schrodinger produced two very different equations. He had one for hydrogen with only a single particle, and he had another one for helium, which had two particles. Nobody seemed concerned at the time about the fact that these two equations were formulated in very different spaces. And they are what I believe is improperly linked, and I'll go on to that in a minute, by what I call Born's ambiguity. Born was the one who said that they are equivalent. And the elephant has been hiding in plain sight. And I noticed that, in fact, the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen art debate, Bohr debate, was never really settled. Various textbook authors believed one or the other of the authors, and they're developed in the literature in the textbook industry two very different schools of thought. And most people never seem to notice this. But with the advent of local realism and quantum entanglement, then it became clear that one could actually contrast and identify these two schools of thought. Okay, school number one, I assert, is essentially a form of local realism. So, what are the textbooks that promote the school number one? It is what I call the laboratory space formulation of quantum mechanics. Okay, it was taught, these are all, I got to cut off the list at about 1980. Begin first with Born's textbook. Two very important textbooks, familiar, Dickey and Whitke and Merzbacher, were very popular. All follow this. Like, for example, in Born's case, the waves are propagating in the lab. He shows pictures of waves moving around. All of these books show waves propagating through a two-slit experiment in lab space. Feynman This was his review article, 1948. He puts it into the title. This is a space-time bridge. French and Taylor used at MIT, and of course the original classic Schiff. Okay, what is school number one? Quantum mechanics for single particle systems is formulated in lab space or real space, the XYZ of this room. There is a point. Every point in this lab space has a vector to it, and Schrodinger's wave function is a function of its position in the room or in the lab. And more importantly, the probability density, psi star psi, is a function of its position in the room. It is the evolution of these waves is governed by Schrodinger's equation in lab space, and it depicts waves of probability. You probably heard any number of people describe quantum mechanics as waves of probability.
It's very interesting. I'm going to go to sleep soon. So it's very interesting. This guy keeps saying, I don't know what the hell is going on in quantum mechanics. I don't understand quantum mechanics. I don't understand. You listen to Derek or the other guys, and to them, oh, it's all clear. Oh, it's all clear. Everything is solved. We understand everything. This guy keeps saying, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't understand it. Okay. We don't understand quantum gravity. We don't understand dark energy and dark matter. And, we don't understand. Okay. One day will come. We will understand. It's not, I don't understand the proof, of course. I don't understand the proof, but he seems convinced that he debunked local realism, whatever. I don't know what to say to that, because he sounds so humble that I don't know what to say. The German guy, this is Klauser. Who was the other guy? I don't remember. Zeilinger. This guy is very humble, so I feel that he's more truthful.
Moreover, there's also defined by Born a conserved probability current, which flows like a fluid through the lab. And he famously used that of current to describe flux conservation in Rutherford scattering. Unfortunately, it only works. The school of thought number one only works for single particle systems. It cannot describe two particle systems, and it cannot describe entanglement. So, what's school number two? Also had a large group of textbooks, which very specifically said we are in configuration space. Okay, one of the most important ones, but Beta and Salpeter.
When I look at people, when I respond to people, oh my God, I have a phone call. I might have to end it.